Welcome everyone to this talk on open source in the finance industry, a developer's perspective. So I'm going to start with a bit of a confession. I don't work in open source. I'm not part of an OSPO. I have no involvement in open source policy. I'm a developer. I write code for a living, and I have used open source over a number of years. So what I wanted to do today was to talk something about why we like open source in the finance industry, some of the concerns that we have with using open source, some of the concerns we have with developers, and also to talk about some of the work that is going on within the community to really get financial companies to collaborate on open source initiatives. So my name is Elspeth Minty. I'm a managing director at RBC Capital Markets. My day job is, as I said, a developer. I'm part of a group that designs and develops shared software components for use across the business. I'm also involved in FinOS, the FinTech Open Source Foundation, where I'm a member of the Technical Oversight Committee. So why do we like open source? I don't think there's anything probably particularly surprising on here. It really comes down to we get high quality code, we get transparency into what the code is actually doing. We can hire people who understand and can use the libraries or the components. And by getting them involved in using open source, they develop talents that are useful for their future careers, so it helps retain those people. There's a lot of documentation available on open source. If I have an issue with, for example, the Spring Framework, the chances are I am not the first person to have that issue. I can go online, I can Google it, I'm probably going to find an answer in Stack Overflow. And that together all makes it very appealing. But there are concerns. I think we've heard already about some of these. The software supply chain and securing that is a big deal. And it's something that is rightly getting a lot of attention at the moment. But there's a lot of other issues as well, and things that we need to think about. Is the project actively maintained? What does that even mean? If a project is not getting any new commits other than to update dependencies to new versions, does that make it more or less usable than another project where there is a lot of commits going on and a lot of actions? Is it that the first project is stable and does what it needs to do? Is the second one under development? What does this actually mean? It's also important, just because we can use open source doesn't mean that we necessarily need to use lots of different types of open source. RBC is a large financial company, but it's also a large technology company. We have a vast amount of code. And if everyone is doing their own thing, picking their own libraries, doing what they want to do, we end up with chaos. Consistency when you're managing large code bases is really important. So just because we can use a particular open source library doesn't mean that we should. We need guidelines, we need some level of consistency applied. And this is particularly true for the shiny new project that's just appeared. We see on almost feels like a daily basis, new software, new components coming out that are the latest and greatest of a particular type of projects. And we need to think about, where is this project in its life cycle? A lot of projects, they get a lot of publicity and a lot of focus very early on, but the momentum can kind of tail out. So we need to make sure if we are shifting, it's the right decision and the right time to do it. And conversely, we also need to make sure that we don't end up getting stuck on something which is more of a legacy project now. We do need to keep up with technology. So again, there's no easy answer to this. We just need to be aware and consider what is the right approach for us to take. We need to be prepared as well. Everyone remembers Log4j. I don't think anyone thinks that's going to be a unique happening. But even smaller issues than happen with Log4j. You know, we get CVEs, we find issues in code. There may be new pieces of functionality that we need within a library. What are we going to do when that happens? What's our plan there? So we need to kind of be aware of what is going on. I think this cartoon by XKCD is complete genius. This essentially is the problem in one go. We are relying on random guy in Nebraska to keep thanklessly maintaining their code, or a bunch of software is going to stop working. And we need to be aware of this, right? We need to understand where are these people and what are our plans here. And some of this is on us as large institutions. We consume it. How are we supporting people who are doing this type of development? And how do our own people make contributions? So, you know, just talking with developers, most developers are very enthusiastic about open source. They think it's a great thing to have, a great thing to be involved in. But if you look at the numbers of people who actually contribute to open source as part of their day job, not necessarily in their spare time, but through their work, the numbers are fairly small. And there's a few reasons for this. One is just does my company let me contribute? Shockingly, not everyone reads every email that gets sent out or every newsletter, and a lot of people just aren't aware that they can do this. So for those of you who are involved in OSPOs, keep talking about it, don't stop. The message is a really important one, and we need it going out. Contributions are too complicated to make. So if I'm going to do a contribution, I need to get it approved by 3 different people. There's this senior guy in another part of an organization that needs to sign off on it. I can only make the contribution in the light of a full moon. You know, there's all these kind of barriers that we put towards people contributing. If this is an issue that you see in your organization, go to the Git proxy talk that's later on in this track, because this will solve your problem. The last one, I think, is the most worrying one, and it's, I don't have time. Love open source, would really like to do it, but I have deadlines. My manager is leaning on me to get stuff done. I just don't have time to do this. And the reason that a lot of open source is high quality is because people take time to look at why something is being contributed, what are we actually trying to do. You need to write the code, you need to write tests, you need to write documentation, everything needs to be reviewed, and this takes time. And in a lot of projects, there isn't time to do that. And people are thinking about the immediate deadline. They are not thinking about the long-term implications. So, okay, I'll just write something quickly myself, and it'll do what I need to do, and I don't need to worry about it. Or my personal favorite, I will fork the code, and I will make the change, and I'll come back and fix it later. Honestly, I will. And you know, we all know the reality is it's never going to happen. that person is going to move on to another project, or things are just going to get in the way and it's not going to happen. I suddenly built up this bunch of legacy. It's expensive for me to manage. There may be vulnerabilities in it that are not showing up because it's not coming from a scanned repository. So we have to look at it that the culture within our companies needs to line up with open source, not just for open source, but for our own development. If we are going to really get the most out of open source, we need to have a collaborative environment on our own projects. And for me, one of the big drivers for a successful open source program is a successful inner source program. Having that culture of people collaborating and it being seen as business as usual for people to work together and to take time to do things right. And yes, there may be deadlines that mean that you can't always do it, but it needs to be seen that people need that time to be able to come back. So I want to go on to a place where I think there is a lot of collaboration. And for me, this is really the success story of open source in the finance industry. For those of you who haven't come across Finos, it's the FinTech Open Source Foundation. It's part of the Linux Foundation. And it's a place where finance companies, technology companies, vendors, industry bodies, we all come together and they are providing us with a safe space where we can have conversations. And this has really been a way that has allowed us to work together on major initiatives that are really going to change how financial industries work. And a great example of this is regulatory technology. And I must admit, when I first started thinking about open collaboration, regulatory technology wasn't the first place that sprung immediately to mind. But if you think about it, it's a great place for this. We have a series of regulations that we have to follow. If we are involved in a particular business, in a particular location, we have to follow the precise set of regulations. There's no discussion about this. We just have to do it. So there is zero competitive advantage to one financial organization doing this better than another one. We just have to do it. So Finos really acted as a catalyst to help companies come together, the financial companies, the technology companies, the regulators, the industry bodies, came together to provide a common data model and software to support using that model and working on the model. And what it means is that previously, when we used to get massive documents of hundreds of pages with precise details of what was required for the regulations, we now get a model, a data model. And that takes a lot of the differences of interpretation out of how we implement regulations. And the regulators are really keen on this because it means that they get a more consistent view from the financial companies as part of the reporting. So there's a lot of benefits for everyone, and bringing people together in this way to work together on a problem like this, I think is probably one of the real kind of blueprint for how, as an industry, we can move forward with and do things in a collaborative way. So just to kind of summarize, to me, the value of open source, it's not just the software, it's the mindset that it brings and this focus on collaborating. And I really think for open source to be successful inside large organizations, that mode of collaboration needs to be normalized. It needs to be business as normal. And it's a really important for the future. I think the future of the next generation of open source with large industries working together is to have organizations like Finos that support and allow us to talk to each other. And for within individual companies for this culture to be much more normalized. So thank you very much for listening to this. And if there's any questions, I think there is a microphone at the back.
Hi. Hi, thank you for the speech. It was wonderful. Just wondering if RBC contributes to open source, and how do you choose if you do, how do you choose the projects to contribute to? Does it come via Finos or not?
Both. We do open source contributions. We contribute to a number of Finos projects. Open RegTech is one that we contribute to. And we use some of it as well. The Git proxy we contribute to, and we actually use that as well. There's a number of projects that we can, and we do it for different reasons. Some it's just like, this is something that we use and we want to get involved because we need stuff from it. Others are larger initiatives like the ones that come through Finos.
Thank you very much for such a brilliant presentation of what's important for open source and financial services. I'm curious as to how you define value for you as a developer, as well as for RBC. Are they one and the same? And how should we be thinking about it?
That's a really interesting question. Honestly, I don't think they are the same. I think what drives developers is different from what drives the business as a whole. But it's how do you bring them together? I mean, for me, the interest in open source is the fact that I can learn from the other people that I work with, and I learn new stuff. And it's that ability just to keep learning stuff that's really important for me. But I think there is a strong value proposition for companies to be involved in open source. But yeah, I think the drivers are a little different.
But maybe they're somewhat connected as well.
Yeah.
Because you have motivated developers
Yeah.
who are addressing your retention of talent.
Yeah, they are definitely connected. And like you say, the ability to hire and retain people by being involved in open source is a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ultimately, for RBC, there's value in mutualizing this.
Yes. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of value for RBC to be involved in open source, both through Finos and also in individual projects. The value that we get from having conversations, really open conversations with other Finos members about why are we doing things this way? What issues, what issues are other companies seeing? How are you thinking about things? Those are conversations that would never happen if Finos didn't exist. So I think it has a huge impact.
Thank you very much, Elspeth.
Thank you.